After the failed attack against Northwest Airlines last week, hawks at the White House have already started looking abroad for those responsible, and it's Yemen that's emerged as a strong suspect after it confirmed there may be as many as 300 al-Qaeda operatives on its territory. But could Obama really justify yet another conflict, we ask? Our correspondent Lauren Lister is in Washington tonight for us. Lauren, hi there. How much is Yemen now in the US spotlight after what happened with that plane?
Kevin, a great deal. Ever since that attempted attack on Christmas Day on a U.S. airliner with a Nigerian suspect who claims to have ties to al-Qaeda in Yemen, Yemen is now really in the spotlight. We have U.S. officials calling for a stepped-up military effort there, calling Yemen an al-Qaeda safe haven. Many are asking, is Yemen the next Afghanistan? Here now to shed some light on the question is Ivan Eland. He is a senior fellow and director at the Center on Peace and Liberty. Mr. Eland, thank you for joining us. So now this month we've heard a lot more about U.S. involvement in Yemen. 2 airstrikes that occurred this month by the Yemeni military, evidently backed by the U.S. The U.S. has spent $70 million in this kind of aid to Yemen. And now we have this attack, or attempted attack rather, by a man backed by al-Qaeda in Yemen, or at least that's the claim. What's your take on the threat posed by what's going on in Yemen, as well as the U.S. involvement in Yemen?
Well, I think, any nation's military is supposed to be designed to preserve the security of the country, but our military, because we use it offensively overseas, or we aid other people with intelligence and equipment, military equipment, as we're doing with the Yemen, the government of Yemen, what happens is it breeds retaliatory attacks on our homeland, which is what we saw. So is the military really providing security for the U.S. by doing these types of things? The al-Qaeda website, the al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula, it's important to add those words because this is primarily a local group. It's an al-Qaeda affiliate, but the issues are local. The U.S. is getting involved in these things, local issues, and it's coming back to haunt the U.S. here in the United States with this sort of attack on the homeland, or at least attempted attack on the homeland.
Okay, but wait, let me interrupt you. So isn't this kind of a case, though, of which comes first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, if there is an al-Qaeda safe haven in Yemen and they are planning attacks on the U.S., isn't it in the U.S.'s defense to be involved in Yemen?
Well, that's a good question, but Yemen is a failed state. Whether it's a sanctuary for attacks on the U.S., I think, is a different story. We have to make a distinction, and the United States has failed to do that in Afghanistan, too, between local groups like the Taliban and al-Qaeda Central, which is on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. The same is true with Yemen. This is primarily a local group. We've done the same thing in Somalia with al-Shabaab, supporting warlords. Al-Shabaab have virtually no following until it's perceived as being a counter to the U.S. influence. So I think we have to watch this. We can't, as in the Cold War, when we labeled everyone communist for a long time, then gradually we found out that there were Chinese communists, there were Vietnamese communists, there were Soviet communists, etc. We have Islamists, but not all of them attack the U.S., and the United States really has to be more selective in how it goes about these things. And even when it does go after these people, it needs to be more in the shadows, or more covert, less of a visible footprint. The first reaction...
How is this become visible just now this month? We haven't heard that much about Yemen in the mainstream media, and now we are, but it sounds like the U.S. has been involved for a while if they invested $70 million in military intelligence and, I suppose, weapons in Yemen this year. So why is this just coming to light now?
Well, because of this attack. It's a well-known secret.
Even before, earlier this month, those airstrikes in Yemen were front-page news and on many newspapers.
Well, they were, but I mean, Yemen, it really takes an attack on the homeland, or an attempted attack on the homeland, to bring faraway lands home to the American people. And so, yes, there has been some publicity. It's a well-known secret, if you want to call it that we're helping out in Yemen. But I think the reaction after this attack was, oh, we have to make this more visible and broader, and that's exact opposite that you want to do. When you fight terrorism in the shadows with covert action, special forces, but mainly law enforcement, I think you have to start there and use the military sparingly and with a light footprint. Otherwise, you're creating more of a sea of terrorists to attack us. The problem is the U.S., we don't realize that our actions overseas are perceived differently than we think they are. We think we're helping the Yemeni government against extremists, which we are, but is it really the U.S. business to be doing that if they're just a local group? Which
well, how do we know that they're just a local group and that they're not tied to central al-Qaeda? I mean,
well, this was their first attack outside the region. They tried to assassinate a Saudi minister, but this is the first time they've tried to attack the U.S. And I think just because they say al-Qaeda, certainly they bear watching. And if they do start farming out attacks for al-Qaeda Central, but al-Qaeda Central, I think, has a more limited ability now to command and control attacks from there. These people are mainly like the al-Qaeda brand name, and they like to be associated with it, and they're also attacking in sympathy with the main group. But they're attacking regionally mainly, and in Yemen, of course.
Okay, really quickly, what do you think should be the right course of action with the U.S. in Yemen?
Well, I think that the group certainly bears watching, but I think we really need to tone down these attacks and make sure that we fight groups that attack the U.S. and not the ones that don't.
Thank you so much for weighing in and for being here. And on that note, we'll send it back to you in Moscow.
All right, there are RT's Lauren Lister and a guest Eland.